Today we're going to be talking about reputation management in the context of family businesses. We're going to be looking at some of the measures that they can take to protect reputation, some of the types of advisor they can consult to protect their reputation, and some of the key issues that arise in today's digital world. So about 10 years ago, if you were looking at managing the reputation of a family business, you'd have been thinking really about the mainstream media and how they cover the family. It's now a lot broader than that. So whilst coverage in national newspapers, regional newspapers and so on is clearly a key issue for families in business, they also need to be thinking about their reputation online, the way their information is stored, how that information could be compromised, and generally a much broader set of reputational risks that are in effect. There are a range of key issues that families in business face from a reputational perspective. These range from mainstream newspaper coverage through to disgruntled employees potentially posting damaging information on social media. It could involve information being stolen from within the business or from a particular member of the family, for instance, through computer systems being accessed or a mobile phone being hacked. You have to think about other issues such as personal data more generally and how that data is stored by other organisations. For instance, if an advisor to one of the members of the family has its systems hacked, information gets leaked, then that can obviously lead to adverse media and other coverage. So there are a number of steps that can be taken from a preemptive perspective, and I think it's always important to think preemptively rather than reactively in today's world, because once a reputational crisis hits, it moves very quickly and it's very difficult to put the genie back in the bottle, so to speak. One of the key things that every family business should have is a crisis management plan, and that will include things like which advisors do they consult if a crisis hits, what's the order of events going to be if a crisis hits, who within the business gets spoken to if, for instance, there's an inquiry from the media, and a general chain of events that gets followed when a crisis becomes a reality. I think one of the key challenges for families in business is the existence of the familial relationships, which sounds simple, but it does add an extra layer of complexity to a situation where you are planning for or responding to a crisis. I think one of the key issues in all of that is to ensure that the family responds proportionately to the crisis. There may be a tendency, particularly if there's criticism of the family as a whole, to want to respond in an emotional or impulsive way. Whilst a robust response is often appropriate, it's not always the case that that's the right thing to do, and therefore you have to take away the layer of emotion that might exist and ensure that the response is proportionate to the issues in play. So historically, if you were a family in business, the key legal tool from the perspective of protecting your reputation would be defamation, which basically relates to harmful and damaging information published to third parties where that information is false. That could potentially create a cause of action. But in today's world, there's a much bigger variety of legal causes of action that may be available to a family in business. So the law of privacy can be particularly useful for individuals where their information is misused. Similarly, confidential information, if it's misused, meaning confidential information of the business as a whole, can create a cause of action. And then you've got the wider spectrum of data protection law, which has become a really live issue in recent years and is only likely to become more and more prevalent. Criminal causes of action, such as blackmail, may come into play where an individual in the family is being subjected to that. And then harassment is something that often crops up in a family context where individuals are being persecuted in some way, and that can be a criminal issue or a civil issue, and we often encounter that when we're dealing with family businesses. The legal cause of action is not always going to be the only approach. It may in fact be that the crisis in question doesn't give rise to legal rights, and therefore communications advice becomes increasingly important, or where, for instance, there's been some sort of compromise of a system or information's been lost. It may be that some investigation needs to be done by IT experts, forensic experts and so on. So it really is a case of a holistic, joined up approach, and that's absolutely crucial.